Tēnā koutou katoa. I've been really heartened by the feedback for the reshaping process, even though we're just in the very early days. I think people are recognising that we're living in a changing world, we're living in changing times. And we as a church really have to reshape ourselves as we remain faithful to the mission that Christ has entrusted to us as church. Mission, it's a key word, isn't it? And it's a key word for us as we reshape ourselves as we look to the future. In 1838, Bishop Jean-Baptiste Pompallier arrived in the Hokianga. He was appointed as the Vicar Apostolic for Western Oceania. Then in 1842, his title was changed. He became the Vicar Apostolic for New Zealand. In 1848, our diocese was born, and Bishop Pompallier became our first bishop. His arrival 10 years before, in 1838, was at the request of the laity that were already here. The Pointons from the Hokianga would go to Sydney when a child needed to be baptised, and every time they were there, they asked for a priest. Already Māori were going to Sydney to train to be katekita, catechists, and they too were requesting a priest for New Zealand. And so our church rose out of the laity. It was their discernment that was asking for a priest for us here in New Zealand. When the diocese was established in 1848, the population of Auckland was about 8,000 people. It was a much smaller community than we know today. In 1850, Bishop Pompallier brought the first Sisters of Mercy to our diocese. And then in 1860, he brought a young French woman, a laywoman, Suzanne Aubert, to our shores. But also in his time as bishop, the land wars were starting, as Māori were being disenfranchised and lands were confiscated. Think of the diocese in Bishop Pompallier's time. The diocese extended down to Gisborne, to Taupo, and Taumarunui in the south. He either had long journeys on unformed roads, or he sailed round the diocese. And while people appreciated his pastoral visits and him as a pastor, there were other problems. Bishop Pompallier wasn't a good administrator. And so when he was replaced in 1870 by Bishop Croke, our second bishop, the diocese was in deep financial waters. And Bishop Croke had to reshape the finances of the diocese as he looked to meet the challenges of the growing communities. You can see in the slides some of the things that were going on around the time of these bishops. Bishop Croke moved on to bigger things back in Ireland, and he was replaced by Bishop Steins, a Jesuit priest, after a 5-year gap before he was appointed. But Bishop Steins was an old man, and he was only in the diocese for less than 2 years. Just before Bishop Steins arrived, the Treaty of Waitangi was declared null and void. And in 1878, the Education Act was passed that would offer free, compulsory and secular education for Pākehā children. Bishop Steins was replaced by Bishop Luck. It was in his time that Rerum Novarum was issued by Pope Leo XIII. the Pope that our current Pope has taken his name from. In 1893, women were given the vote in New Zealand, years before in the UK and the US. And the Māori population in New Zealand had dropped from over 100,000 120 years before to less than 42,000 as the impact of disease devastated the local community. Bishop Luck was replaced by Bishop Lenihan. Again, it was new things starting to happen in our society. In 1898, New Zealand introduced the world's first old age pension for men. The world was recognising that it needed to care for its vulnerable. He was replaced by Bishop Cleary, who was bishop during the First World War and the Russian Revolution. In 1919, to try and get round the diocese a little easier, he started flying on a Boeing float plane. He was bishop at the time of the Irish War of Independence. And in 1928, under his watch, St. Peter's Rural Training School, later known as Hatupetera, was established on the North Shore. But in the latter years of Bishop Cleary's episcopacy, he was given an auxiliary bishop, James Michael Liston, who was to be a bishop through the Depression years, through the Second World War. In 1950, Auckland City had grown to a population of 319,000. Bishop Liston didn't attend the sessions of the Second Vatican Council. He was becoming an old man. And he was replaced by Bishop Delagi, who was the one who was to really introduce the changes of the Second Vatican Council into the Diocese of Auckland. Bishop Delagi was to go on to become the Archbishop of Wellington and made a cardinal, and he was replaced by Bishop John Mackey. In 1975, the Private Schools Conditional Integration Act was passed, and this enabled our Catholic schools to survive. The same year saw Parliament pass the Treaty of Waitangi Act, establishing the Waitangi Tribunal. Ill health forced the early retirement of Bishop Mackey, and he was replaced by Bishop Dennis Brown. While he was bishop, Pope John Paul became the first pope to visit New Zealand. Māori was made an official language, and a priest was imprisoned for sexual abuse for the first time. The population of Auckland was also changing, with large numbers of Pacific Islanders arriving. Bishop Dennis was later moved to Hamilton Diocese, and he was replaced by his auxiliary bishop, Bishop Pat Dunn. In Bishop Pat's time, we've seen large numbers of new immigrants arriving from Asia. We've seen the rise of the internet and social media. And we've seen a change of popes, with the death of Pope John Paul II, and then the retirement of Pope Benedict XVI, and then the election of Pope Francis. Two things in these slides, which I'll talk about later: co-responsibility from Pope Benedict, and Pope Francis's Evangelii Gaudium and synodality. There are other changes happening in our population as well. The city by 2020 had reached 1.6 million, and nearly half of New Zealanders said they had no religion. Then came the COVID pandemic. And finally, there came the 12th Bishop of Auckland after the retirement of Bishop Pat. During my brief time here in Auckland, we've had the Synod on Synodality. We've seen the results of the Royal Commission on Abuse in Faith and State Care. We've seen the election of Pope Leo XIV. And now as a diocese, we need to look to the future together. And I say together because none of the bishops that I've mentioned would have been able to achieve anything without the lay people, the religious, and the clergy that surrounded them. This is an opportunity to say thank you to you all and to your ancestors, your tupuna in the faith, for the way that you've supported the previous bishops and all the various good works of the diocese down through the ages since we were established in 1848. As you see, our world has changed, our diocese has changed, and so the church has changed, as she constantly has to look to reshape herself to respond to the needs of the mission for the changing people that make up the diocese, for the people that don't see themselves as part of the Catholic community, but nonetheless we have a care and concern about. Our mission is the mission of Jesus. The mission remains the same, but the mission field is always changing, and the way we present the good news of Jesus has to change as well. And this is why we're having this process of reshaping, to re-look at everything, to prepare ourselves for the mission not only today, but in the next 50 to 100 years ahead. The decisions that we make now help shape our future. As a diocese, I ask every one of you to be part of the discernment that we'll take together in the Spirit, so that we might be reshaped by the Holy Spirit and be true servants of the mission of Jesus. God bless you all.